It's 3:17 a.m. The digital clock blinks red in the dark, each second pulsing like a heartbeat. You're not sure belongs to you. Your eyes are open. You weren't dreaming. And yet, you feel chased. You don't hear anything, but something inside you is screaming. Not pain, not grief, just this feeling. An invisible pressure in the chest, a weightless panic whispering, "What if this is it?" No one has broken in. Your body is fine. The world outside your window is quiet. Yet your mind spins like it's being hunted. And for what? Death hasn't come. It's just the idea of it that woke you. That, Marcus Aurelius would say, is where the first misunderstanding begins. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. You've likely read this quote on a clean Instagram carousel or seen it etched in minimalist font across a motivational reel. But at 3:17 in the morning, when your mouth is dry and the world is hollow, it doesn't feel like a quote anymore. It feels like a question. Because the truth is, you're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of leaving the party before you've danced, of running out of time before you did what mattered, of discovering that your entire life was lived on autopilot. Marcus was emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, yet every night he sat down and wrote to himself as if he were a student trying to learn how to live. You are too, except your empire is anxiety and your enemy is invisible. You get up quietly and walk to the mirror. You expect to see something, but you don't, just you, no monster, no fate, just a body slowly growing older. And somehow, this quiet change is the most terrifying part. You remember something you read once. A curious debate still circulates academic circles. Is fear of death evolutionary, or is it cultural, taught and reinforced by modern media and disconnected living? Marcus would likely smile at that. To him, the answer was simpler. It is not death that is the problem. It is our opinion about death. You frown because opinion doesn't feel like a strong enough word, but then you remember the time you almost drowned as a child. It wasn't death you feared then either. It was the loss of control, just like now. There's an odd story about a Roman general, Cassius, who was so terrified of dying in battle, he bribed his own scouts to exaggerate enemy numbers so he had an excuse not to attack. The irony? He died anyway. In his tent, from sickness, never once drawing his sword. Fear doesn't save you, it only delays you. You pour a glass of water and it tastes too warm. The kitchen light is fluorescent, too sharp. Still, everything feels dreamlike, like your skin doesn't quite fit. You wonder, is this what Marcus meant when he said that life is opinion? You sit down, not to read, not to scroll, just to be. And something unexpected happens. The fear doesn't go away, but it softens. Like a dog barking behind a fence once you stop running. You realize it's not death you're afraid of. It's being forgotten. It's leaving no trace. It's wasting your one chance to say, "I was here." A strange click happens in your chest, not painful, but profound. Just like that. You remember a funeral from last year. Someone you barely knew. A co-worker's father. You didn't even want to go, but you did, out of obligation. You sat in the back, near the door, planning to sneak out early, but then something happened. The son stood up to speak, holding a crumpled sheet of paper. His hands shook, his voice cracked, and he said he never talked much. He just showed up, every time. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how you live forever. You never forgot that line. You didn't know why, until now. Because maybe living forever isn't about glory, or legacy, or nameplates. Maybe it's about presence, about showing up, not just for others, but for yourself. You look at your phone, no notifications. You feel calm, strangely. Marcus called it ataraxia, inner stillness. No gods descended, no truth was revealed. You're still tired, still unsure. But for the first time in weeks, your shoulders have relaxed. And before you go back to bed, one question loops in your mind. If I knew I would die next week, what would I stop tolerating today? You don't have the answer yet, but the question is enough. The chapel still smelled like old wood and carnations. You didn't know him well, just the father of a friend, but something about that day lingered like smoke in your clothes. Maybe it was the way the son stammered over his words, or how no one knew quite what to say afterward. Or maybe it was the silence, the kind that doesn't just sit in the room but fills it. Outside, the sun was indecently bright, as if it hadn't been invited to the funeral and didn't know how to act. You stood near the curb, watching people hug, talk softly, laugh even. Strange how quickly life resumes. You felt yourself split, one part standing there, polite, grounded, the other floating slightly above, wondering, when I die, will it matter that I lived? It was that question that followed you, into the car, into the elevator, into the mirror. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, soldier, philosopher, had every reason to believe his life mattered. Yet he wrote about death constantly, as if trying to make peace with the fact that legacy is a flame and most of us are just matches. Consider how swiftly all things are dissolved into nothing, the material bodies into the universe, and the memories of them into eternity. That was his idea of comfort. And somehow, it is. Because it means you're free. Free from performing, from pretending, from chasing a future that doesn't even belong to you. A few weeks after that funeral, you were standing in line at the grocery store when a child behind you asked his mother, "Why do people have to die?" She didn't answer. Not really. She gave him the soft, sweet lie we give to keep children from falling apart. Marcus wouldn't lie to that child. He'd say, "Because you are part of nature, and nature moves forward." That sounds cold, but it isn't. You started walking differently after that. Less urgency, more intention. Not as if you were running out of time, but as if the time was already sacred. Not just on birthdays or vacations or candlelit dinners, but in line, in traffic, washing dishes. Because Marcus said, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not what they say or think that should trouble you, but what you do with the time you are given." You began measuring your life differently. Not in milestones, in moments. There's a strange story about Steve Jobs. In his later years, knowing death was near, he began wearing the same black turtleneck every day, not just for branding, but to eliminate trivial decisions. He didn't want to waste a single ounce of thought on what didn't matter. Death, he said, was the greatest filter for focus. You didn't become a minimalist after the funeral. But you did stop checking your phone in elevators. You stopped answering texts you didn't want to answer. You even stopped watching shows you weren't enjoying, not out of some bold revelation, but because something inside whispered, "If I were dying, would this matter?" It's funny, that phrase used to scare you. If I were dying, now it feels clean, honest, even comforting. You remember a public debate you once heard online. Some professor arguing that awareness of death leads to paralysis. That memento mori is a dangerous idea for modern minds. But someone else, quieter, responded, "No. Not if you remember to also live." That stuck with you. Because knowing you'll die doesn't freeze you. It frees you. Frees you from needing to win every argument. From needing everyone to like you. From putting off your dreams for some mythical right time that never comes. Marcus didn't just write about death. He meditated on it daily. Not morbidly, but methodically. Not to feel fear, but to strip it away. He believed that you cannot fear something that is natural. You can only misunderstand it, and yet, When you stood in that chapel and looked at that casket, you misunderstood it completely. You didn't see peace. You saw an ending. But Marcus would remind you, death isn't the opposite of life. It's the opposite of birth. Life? Life is what you do in between. So now, when you eat, you taste it. When you laugh, you notice. When you're quiet, you don't panic. You've started saying no to things you used to say yes to. You've started saying yes to things that scare you. You've started seeing yourself as a part of nature. And nature doesn't ask why the flower blooms, it just does. You began rereading Meditations. Slowly this time. Not as a self-help guide, but as a journal. A voice. A man talking to himself before bed, trying to stay sane in a mad world. You realize something. Marcus never says, "Don't die." He says, "Don't live like you're already dead." And that is the pivot. Because maybe the real danger isn't death. It's numbness, it's distraction, it's surviving your whole life, but never once waking up inside it. One night, a few weeks later, you sat by the window. It was raining, not hard, just enough to tap softly on the glass like someone asking to be let in. Oh, you didn't expect the call. The voice on the other end was gentle, like it had practiced sounding soft. It told you she was gone. No accident, no drama, just silence. One moment here, one moment not. And somehow, the world didn't pause. Cars still passed by outside. A dog barked, a kettle whistled in another room. Nothing adjusted for your grief. You hung up without saying much. What was there to say? That evening, you didn't cry. You folded a sweater instead. You put dishes away. You moved slowly, automatically, the way people do when the body's still here, but the mind has slipped slightly to the left. Marcus Aurelius knew this feeling. He lost many, children, friends, even his brother. Each death carved out a little more space inside him. But instead of filling that space with bitterness, he poured in clarity. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. You remembered that line as you stared at the chair she always sat in, the one near the window, worn in the corners. One of the legs was slightly shorter, so it wobbled when you sat. She never minded. She used to sit there and hum, sometimes with no melody. Just presence. And now the chair was just a chair, and the silence didn't hum back. It would be easy to fill this silence with noise, with phone calls, with podcasts, with scrolling, but Marcus would have asked you to listen. Not to the outside world, but to the inside. He believed death was not an enemy, only a messenger, reminding you of the one truth modern people try to bury. You are not owed tomorrow. There's a story about Michel de Montaigne, the French philosopher who nearly died in a riding accident. As his body was thrown, time slowed. He expected terror, but what he felt was strange calm. Later he wrote, "If death finds me planting my cabbage, I care not. I shall not interrupt my work." That quote made you pause. What was your cabbage? What small, sacred task would you return to, even knowing the end might be moments away? You stood in front of her closet for a long time. Not to clean it, just to remember. You touched the fabric of her favorite shirt. It still smelled like rosemary and soap. Your mind whispered, "She is gone." But something deeper replied, "No, she was never yours to keep." Marcus wrote that we are all borrowed from nature, that everything we love will return to the earth, not out of cruelty, but out of cycle. And that includes you. Many people still argue whether Stoicism is emotionally healthy. Critics say it suppresses grief, hides from love, avoids vulnerability. But they miss the point. Marcus didn't run from grief. He just didn't let it own him. You can cry, yes, you can ache. But you must never forget the frame, that you live in a universe that takes back everything it gives. And still Still, you say thank you. You sat in that wobbly chair that night, the one by the window. You lit a small candle, not out of ceremony, but out of stillness. Watching the flame flicker, you remembered how she used to say, "We never really notice fire until it's almost out." And that's the thing, isn't it? We don't pay attention until something is slipping away, until time becomes real, until death makes everything sharp, quiet, vivid. Marcus believed that a soul that accepts everything, death included, cannot be broken. Because what can you take from someone who expects nothing and embraces all? You picked up Meditations again, flipping pages now stained with small tears, fingerprints, and moments. You found a line you hadn't underlined before. Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. You hated it at first. Delight. But the more you sat with it, the more you understood. Change is the hand that writes your story. You don't control the pen, but you choose the meaning. You choose whether the pain becomes wisdom or just another wound. You close the book softly. Not because you were finished, but because you had understood just enough to let go. For now. Outside, the night was silent again. But this time, the silence didn't press against your chest. It sat beside you, calmly. You still missed her. You always would. But now, instead of aching for her presence, you smiled at her echoes. The way she said your name, the way she folded her hands, the stories she told that never quite had an ending. And maybe that's the point. Maybe none of this is about ending. It's about remembering that it ends, so you can begin, again and again. Because life doesn't ask for your fear, it only asks for your attention. And death only asks that you not wait. Not wait to say, "I love you." Not wait to be kind. Not wait to rest. Not wait to live. You extinguish the candle, and as the smoke curls upward, soft and fading, you whisper a thank you. Not to anyone in particular, just to life. To this exact moment. To the silence. So now, everything is quiet. Not because there is nothing more to say, but because what needed saying has been said, gently. You are still here. The room hasn't changed. The world outside still moves, but something inside has settled. You don't need to fear death, not because it won't come, but because it has already come, again and again, in every goodbye, in every closed chapter, in every version of yourself you've left behind. And you're still here. You've already survived so many endings, and that means you know how to begin. So when tomorrow comes, don't rush it. Don't scroll past it. Don't sleepwalk through it. Walk slowly. Notice the breath. Feel your steps. Speak with softness. And maybe, when fear comes knocking again, as it will, you won't run. You'll open the door. You'll look it in the eye. And you'll say, "I've met you before, and I'm not afraid." The candle is gone, but the warmth remains. And somewhere, in some quiet, infinite place, Marcus is still writing, still reminding you, death is not to be feared, only forgotten lives are. So live, softly, deeply, now.